Hi, this is Scott Garibay, and today we're going to talk about Dungeons and Dragons, and we're going to talk about the hidden rules of class food. All right, let's get into this. So we're dungeon masters, and one of the most challenging things we have to do is to differentiate non-player characters. So we are, we're leaving the simple world of writing novels, and we're entering the much more challenging world of creating creating locations, entities. Dungeons and Dragons refers to entities as non-player characters. I'm starting to shift toward the term entities. I think it's just clearer, and for player characters, I just use character. It's a clear understanding. So when I think about Dungeons and Dragons, I think about characters, player characters. I think about locations. I think about entities, that's non-player characters. I think about artifacts. These are powerful magical items, right? Magical items overall, although I understand that Dungeons and Dragons has its own bracket for artifacts, but I just think of magical items as artifacts. And finally, relationships. And I think all of Dungeons and Dragons boils down into a clear understanding. This is actually from my tabletop role-playing game. I use clear in my tabletop role-playing game. But I use it as an infrastructure for communicating about Dungeons and Dragons and understanding Dungeons and Dragons. Okay, so characters, locations, entities, artifacts, relationships, right? So differentiating entities, non-player characters, is very challenging for a dungeon master. You have to name, define, and drop into a player character in literally seconds, because you're into an entity, a non-player character, in seconds, because your player characters can go left when you expected them to go right, and you are responsible to populate the world and to do it quickly in a winsome manner, right? And the reality is, like, writing novels is dramatically simple compared to this, right? And I'm going to tell you right now, there's a whole lot of people who tell you anybody can be a dungeon master. That is pure bunkum. Pure bunkum. Only charismatic, confident, intelligent people can really be dungeon masters. The biggest thing, I think people don't understand this, dungeon mastering is public speaking. That cuts 75% of all people just gone off the list. Right? I don't think people have any clue how challenging dungeon mastering really is. And it doesn't do the world any service to sell it as simple. It's not even remotely simple, okay? So we have to differentiate entities. We have to differentiate non-player characters, okay? So what are the challenges to doing this? What is the challenges to being a human being and then dropping into a new sentience, just like airdropping into a new sentience and building from the ground up in seconds a new person, right? Well, in order to do this, we really have to understand humanity at a base level and at a deep level, right? So one of the best tools I've found for this recently, especially for differentiating player characters, is specifically the hidden rules of class. Now, I actually couldn't find a source for this. If you could help me find a source for this, it would be very helpful. All I found was a single sheet of paper, a picture of a single sheet of folded paper on Pinterest. But when I read it, I was like, oh my gosh, this is incredible. And so what it does is it has sections, right, of human experiences divided by wealth classes: poverty, middle, wealthy, okay? So when we think about entities, non-player characters, we should think about them as poverty entities, middle-class entities, and wealthy entities in Dungeons and Dragons, right? And once we do that, we can take those columns and we can start thinking about distinctly different sections of human experience. All right, so let's get all the way there on this. Okay, so what we're going to talk about today is we're going to talk about food. There are many of these parameters, these human experience parameters, that you can look at from the bracket of poverty, middle, and wealth, okay? But to quickly create an entity, right, think about how humans interact with food based on wealth class. So a poverty entity, right? How do they interact with food? They want quantity, right? They don't have a lot of money. They need to fuel their bodies, right? They need to use food to fuel their body, right? It is really nothing more than that for a poverty entity, right? They need to fuel their body, and that's what food is to them. And they want to put coin down, right? Put down a copper, and they want to get as much food as possible because they want that food to last all day or maybe even 2 days, right? And so a poverty entity is going to think of food from the perspective of quantity, okay? Let's think about, and by the way, let's think in Dungeons and Dragons terms, who's a poverty entity? An urchin, right? Someone who's, the Dragonborn came into, the evil Dragonborn wizard came into town, burned half the houses, and now there's 2 orphans, right? Which in Dungeons and Dragons we call urchins. They don't got no money, right? Like, nobody's taking care of them, right? They're poverty entities, right? So they're going to want to, if they get a copper, right, from shining somebody's boots, right? They're going to want to put that copper down and get as much quantity of food as possible. Now let's think about a middle-class Dungeons and Dragons person. So who would this be? This would be a struggling merchant, right? Let's think of someone near Phandalin, a woodcutter's wife, and the woodcutter died, right? And now she just sells apples that she gets out of the Neverwinter Forest, and she sells them to the miners in Phandalin. And you know what? She picks as many apples as she can in a day. She puts them in the cart. She takes them to Phandalin, and the dwarves and the human miners there buy them literally off the cart, and she's going to get a few coppers, right? Maybe she gets a silver. She will probably never see a gold in her life, right? This is a middle-class entity, right? What does she think about when it comes to food, right? Well, she might have some silver, right? She is going to want quality, right? She can go to the Stonehill Inn, right, in Phandalin, and she can say, hey, I want that mutton stew, and I want some meat, right? And let's say that she got, she found 2 carts of apples, and her apples are already picked for tomorrow, and she's got them busheled up and kind of hidden behind a few rocks in the Neverwinter Forest, right? So now she can start to think about quality, right? So poverty entity thinks about quantity with food. Middle class entity thinks about quality, right? They're not just trying to, jam food in their maw to fuel their body. They're actually looking at food as maybe a relief from a hard day of picking apples, right? More than just fuel, right? And the apple picker, she might have a few silver coins hidden away, right? So she's no longer in that quantity mode. She's in that quality mode. Now let's talk about Harbin Wester. Okay, he is wealthy. Harbin Wester is the mayor of Phandalin. Okay, and Phandalin is between Waterdeep and Neverwinter. Right. So and Harbin Wester, he can tax the miners. He can sell them goods. He gets money from the general store. He gets a tax from the Stonehill Tavern, right? All those things, right? And he's wealthy. So what does he think about when he thinks about food? Well, he's not just going to roll over to Stonehill Tavern and ask for some, mutton stew and some mead. His dinner is going to be delivered to his home from the Stonehill Tavern. And when it gets there, it's going to have a silver chase, and he's going to open it up, and his mutton stew is going to be in fine porcelain, right? And the steam is going to rise off of it, and there's going to be some nice seasoning, right? And there might even be a dribble of dragon sauce around the plate where he can dip his bread. And you know what he's thinking about? Presentation, right? He is beyond quality. That what he's getting from Stonehill Tavern as the mayor is the best that's going to be served to any customer, right? He's no longer thinking about quantity. He can get as much as he wants, right? He's no longer even thinking about quality. He's saying, he knows he's going to have quality. He's saying that my meal is going to be presented in the silence of my own home, right? It's going to be hot and fresh. There's going to be some nice porcelain, a nice porcelain bowl, right? And in addition to that, there might be some drizzled dragon sauce in the sign of a pickaxe. You know, like, his food will actually have presentation. He is wealthy. How his food is presented to him matters. He cares about presentation. Poverty entity. Quantity. I need to fuel myself for a day or maybe two, right? Middle class entity. I want a quality meal. I want it to bring me some joy. I want it to be hot, right? It's more than fuel. It might be a respite, right? Finally, the wealthy. I will have quantity. I will have quality, and you will present it to me in a way that is special and even contains an aspect of art and beauty, right? Quantity, quality, presentation. When we think about entities, non-player characters, we need to differentiate them, and class is one of the most powerful ways that humans differentiate themselves, right? And we need to reflect that in every humanoid that we airdrop our sentience in when we run Dungeons & Dragons. All that is my humble opinion. How do you do this? Have you seen these hidden rules of class? I think they're a powerful tool for every dungeon master. If you've dealt with this, or if you've even used this in your own life, I'd love to hear about it. Let me know in the comments below. Please consider liking, subscribing, and have a wonderful millennium.